In Africa, the night sky is dim, and several Dongfeng warrior assault vehicles are galloping at high speed on the vast wilderness. The rumbling noise resounds between the world like thunder, but there is a dead silence around it, which can be seen everywhere in the wilderness during the day. All kinds of animals seemed to disappear, and it seemed that they were the only ones left between the heaven and the earth. The passengers of these Dongfeng warriors are fighters from China's most mysterious special forces. They are performing a top-secret special mission. Chen Lang, the commander of this assault team and the rank of major, was sitting in a Dongfeng warrior at the moment looking at the electronic map in his hand. Behind him are two heavily armed warriors. The bear-like nickname Rhino on the left is the heavy fireman of the assault team, and the short and powerful nickname Monkey on the right is good at sneak attacks. The most guys, so much so that some people call him Chatter. Brother Wolf, what's so great about the contents of this box that we are supposed to be picked up? The monkey asked curiously. Chen Lang put down the electronic map in his hand, looked at the alloy box beside him, and said, "It doesn't matter what it is, we just carry out the task." The rhino said loudly, "Just the monkey, you talk a lot, it's up to us what is in this box. Let's send it to the place and we're done." The monkey pointed to the back, and said, "The guy in the car behind is said to be a second-generation official, and I don't know what he has sent such a thing to mix with. I don't think he understands anything at all." Rhino curled his lips, and said in an angry manner, "I know this is the case, you don't know it, it's stupid." The monkey was not convinced, and said, "Then what's the matter with you?" The rhino snorted and said, "Is it unknown? This guy is here for gilding. He has had such an experience that his high-ranking relatives can just promote him? Idiot!" The monkey was stunned. I was stunned, and couldn't help cursing, "Damn! What a dog day!" Rhino curled his lips and said, "This is pretty good. Haven't you seen the beautiful mayors and the magistrates one after another in recent years? What are they all?" The monkey looked even more angry, but he also felt helpless. Chen Lang said, "Okay, stop talking nonsense." The two stopped talking nonsense. At this moment, countless dazzling lights suddenly came out of the car window. Chen Lang and the others couldn't help being shocked, and several Hummers stopped at the same time. Immediately, countless figures appeared under the bright light from all directions, as well as several armed vehicles. The monkey said in surprise, "We are surrounded, is this what happened?" Chen Lang immediately ordered through the headset, "Pay attention to the teams, be on the spot, and be ready for battle." The special soldiers on several warriors were ready for battle. The heavy machine guns on the warriors opened the bolt and aimed at the unidentified ones. "Enemy!" Chen Lang opened the loudspeaker and shouted to the other party, "This is the Chinese army, and it is performing a mission. Please leave immediately, otherwise you will be treated as an enemy of the Chinese army, and you will be at your own risk." Through the car window, Chen Lang saw a tall man standing on a hillside in the front left, holding a loudspeaker and shouting in a bit blunt Chinese, "Listen to the Chinese, you are surrounded, and immediately hand over the meteorite fragments. Otherwise I will destroy you all. My patience is not good, you only have 1 minute." Chen Lang heard what the opponent said, knowing that he could not be good, and was too lazy to talk nonsense with the opponent, and through his headset, the opponent ordered, "Listen, everyone, prepare for 10 seconds, break out to the west." The commandos couldn't help being surprised. Because they came from the west, this is going to the east side of the evacuation site, why is the Wolf brother breaking out to the west? However, the commandos had always respected Brother Wolf, and they didn't think much about it, and they all made preparations to break through. As time passed by, the surrounding unknown enemies looked at the Chinese soldiers in the encirclement for a while. From their point of view, these Chinese soldiers in front of them were already in the urn, and it was impossible to play any tricks. They did not think that the other party was here. Dare to resist in this situation. It is not surprising that they have such an idea, because just a few years ago, the United States Delta Commando, known as the most elite, fell into their traps in the Amazon forest and surrendered. The situation at that time was very similar to today. If the Delta Commando is still like this, these Chinese people are naturally not to mention it. Boom! The engine of the Dongfeng warrior suddenly uttered a huge roar. All the mercenaries were taken aback, and they were randomly surprised to see those Dongfeng warriors suddenly turning on the spot and rushing away along the way. Before the mercenaries could react, the heavy machine guns on the Dongfeng warriors spewed out fierce gunfire, and a rain of bullets flew on the face. Many people had no time to avoid being knocked to the ground, and the mercenaries suddenly became chaotic. The leading mercenary picked up the walkie-talkie and yelled in English. All the mercenaries had already reacted. While shouting, they shot and chased the Dongfeng warrior. The gunfire flickered at the scene, and countless lines of fire were staggered in the night sky. Fly! The actions of the Chinese army surpassed the others' expectations, and several Dongfeng warriors rushed out of the enemy's encirclement in one fell swoop. However, at this moment, a roar came from the night sky. Chen Lang frowned, and immediately looked towards the night sky. He saw two bird helicopters flying over the small woods next to him, and immediately shouted into the microphone, "Attention everyone, there is an enemy helicopter appearing." The heavy machine gun on the Dongfeng warrior immediately adjusted its direction, and the gunman yelled and pulled the trigger. In the fierce gunfire, the bullets pounced directly on the two helicopters that were flying over. A helicopter burst into flames, and fell to the ground one side, bursting out a dazzling flame. However, another helicopter fired two rockets at the Dongfeng warrior that was running at the forefront. Seeing that the two rockets flew straight down with a long trail, they had close contact with the Dongfeng warrior. Almost at the same time, a huge fireball rose up, and the Dongfeng warrior turned a few tendons in midair. Fell heavily to the ground. The other two Dongfeng warriors that followed rushed to a halt. Chen Lang immediately observed the surrounding situation and found that the Dongfeng warrior had completely blocked the road. He immediately ordered, "Everyone abandon the vehicle and retreat on foot. Quick!" The personnel on the two Dongfeng warriors immediately got off. Then, he retreated to the west on foot in a battle formation. One of them was not dressed in a black combat uniform and fully armed like the special forces, but a handsome young man in a suit and leather shoes. This person is the second generation of the official that the monkey said before. Everyone called him the Sun. He was sent by the boss to be responsible for contacting the local government. In fact, it is useless. At this moment, the elder brother in a suit and leather shoes and oily face was panicked and yelling at the peak. If it weren't for the monkey to drag him, he might have ran to the enemy in a panic. At this time, the bird helicopter that destroyed the Dongfeng warrior car folded over the fuselage in the distant sky and flew towards this side. Upon seeing this, the young man yelled hysterically with scared face. Chen Lang grabbed the sniper rifle from the monkey and aimed at the bird helicopter. The mercenary piloting the helicopter saw it through the night vision goggles and said mockingly, "You are stupid to kill my helicopter with a rifle." At this moment, he saw the opponent's gunfire flashing almost at the same time. A hole appeared in the windshield in front of him and in his forehead. The helicopter immediately lost control, spinning and falling down. It turned out that Chen Lang was not aiming at the helicopter, but the mercenary piloting the helicopter. Chen Lang returned the sniper rifle to the monkey and led the crowd to retreat to the west. OZW.com. However, before they ran far, countless mercenaries appeared around. The two sides immediately fought fiercely. The lines of fire intertwined into a dense fire net in the night sky, and English screams came and went one after another. Although Chen Lang and the others shot and killed many people, there were too many enemies. They were suppressed in the small forest and could not get out. Why are there so many mercenaries here? It turned out that these mercenaries were originally going to raid the excavation site, but learned that Chen Lang and the others had left with the meteorite fragments, so they turned back halfway and came from the west, and they met Chen Lang and the others here. As the battle was fierce, the mercenaries who had surrounded Chen Lang and them also chased up and joined the siege. The attack is even more violent. These mercenaries are well trained, powerful, and large in numbers. Although the Chinese soldiers have shot and killed countless enemies, they cannot completely wipe them out. On the contrary, they feel that there are more and more enemies, while the Chinese special forces are falling one by one. In a pool of blood, the mercenary finally rushed into the grove, and the remaining Chen Lang and the others were caught in a hand-to-hand battle. Rhino saw more than a dozen mercenaries rushing up, pulling the trigger desperately, and shooting down a few people, but the bullets were all gone, and a bullet from the opponent hit his left shoulder. He was strong. His body fell heavily to the ground. All the mercenaries rushed forward and held the rhinoceros who wanted to struggle. The rhino couldn't get away. He yelled and pulled off the safety ring of the grenade on his body. With a loud bang, he died together with the 7 or 8 mercenaries. The monkey held a sniper rifle and fired continuously. He no longer knew how many enemies he had shot down. He himself was already scarred. The mercenary sniper in the distance pulled the trigger at the scarred monkey. In the sight, the monkey fell down. The mercenaries saw their opponents so tough and sturdy, they couldn't help being frightened, but they attacked more frantically. This is the case with people, they tend to become more crazy when they are afraid. Chen Lang ran out of rifle bullets, and then ran out of pistol bullets. Several sturdy mercenaries wielded military knives and rushed up to try to kill Chen Lang. Chen Lang quickly threw away his pistol, drew out his dagger and fought hand-to-hand with the opponent. Amidst the roar, he saw flesh and blood flying across the board. Chen Lang was scarred, but he just killed the bear-like mercenaries. Chen Lang couldn't help but stumbling, knelt down on one knee, water against his crazy bloodthirsty eyes, shocking. Seeing that the mercenaries around him had been wiped out, Chen Lang tried his best to stand up, quickly picked up the box, and pulled up the scared son who was paralyzed on the ground and ran towards the quiet southwest. The son finally recovered and shouted hysterically, "We can't escape! We can't escape!" They were originally the most elite special forces of the Western powers. They will kill us. Let's surrender. Chen Lang turned his head and glanced at the son coldly. The son was so scared that he dared not speak anymore. Chen Lang turned his head and continued to open the road ahead. Snapped. There was a sudden gunshot behind him, but he felt that his right shoulder was pushed abruptly, and he knelt to the ground on one knee. Chen Lang wanted to stand up, but such a simple action is now so difficult. I saw that young master walked in front of Chen Lang with a pistol in both hands, and shouted hysterically, "You want to die, I don't want to die with you." Chen Lang frowned, and cursed, "Isn't it?" The son-in-law shouted frantically, "I am a dog, I can live. You are a hero, but you are going to die." At this moment, more than a dozen mercenaries surrounded them. Seeing this scene, Chen Lang frowned. The leading mercenary glanced at Chen Lang, who was scarred and almost unable to move. His eyes could not help showing admiration, but then he showed mockery, and said, "What is the use of Chinese soldiers no matter how brave you are? Your traitors are. Too much." Chen Lang's heart moved, he looked at the son, frowned and said, "It turns out it is you bastard. I said how the other party is so clear about our actions. Why? Why are you betraying?" The son-in-law smiled frantically, "Only you fools will sacrifice for China. I don't want to be a Chinese. After this is done, I can get $20 million, and then I can immigrate to the United States." Chen Lang suddenly raised his right hand and grabbed the right hand of young master holding the gun. Young master was shocked, and hurriedly pulled the trigger, snapped, but missed. Chen Lang tugged hard, dragged the son-in-law in front of him, pinched his neck, grabbed his pistol and withstood his forehead. Brother son is scared to death. When the mercenaries saw this, they were taken aback. Even if they wanted to do something, the mercenary in the lead stopped them. Brother Gongza saw the muzzle against his forehead, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. He peed his pants in fright and shouted, "You, what are you going to do?" "Me, my uncle is Director Li." Chen Lang coldly said, "That's more it." Then he pulled the trigger, and with a snap, the bullet shot through the head of the son. The son died, with a look of jealousy and fear on his face. Chen Lang showed disgust and let go of his brother. The mercenary leader said, "Hand over what we want, I can let you go." Chen Lang glanced at the boss, smiled coldly, and said, "If you have life, let's say this." Then he pulled off the safety ring of the glorious bullet on his body. The so-called glorious ammunition is the tradition of Chinese special forces. As the name suggests, it is a grenade that perishes with the enemy at the last minute. When the mercenaries saw this, they were greatly shocked, and the leader exclaimed, "No good!" Boom! There was a loud noise and the flames rolled. However, something strange happened at this time. A faint ball of light enveloped Chen Lang, excluding all the power of the explosion, and blew up all the mercenaries, but Chen Lang was not affected in any way. Chen Lang was surprised to see that he was not dead, and then he found that the alloy box in front of him did not know when it disappeared. The meteorite fragment was suspended in the air, as if it was the halo that enveloped him. Just when Chen Lang was surprised, the aperture created by the meteorite changed again. The light blue aperture quickly dimmed and turned into something like a black hole. Then Chen Lang felt involuntarily being sucked by the black hole. "Go in." Chen Lang was sucked into the black hole, only to feel the darkness in front of him. "When I was feeling overwhelmed, my eyes suddenly opened up. I saw the dazzling stars and the clean night sky, the mountains stretched and shadowed, and I was actually falling rapidly from the sky. Only heard a loud bang, Chen Lang crashed through the roof, and then with a plop, he fell into a steaming pool of hot water. At the same time, a woman's screams also passed into his ears. Chen Lang hurriedly got out of the water, only to see a naked and beautiful woman in the steaming heat, covering her chest with her hands, and Chen Guang shrinking in a corner looking at herself in horror. Chen Lang was taken aback for a moment, and he couldn't help but think, "How beautiful." The woman's voice suddenly came, "Who are you? You, what are you trying?" Chen Lang couldn't help feeling a little strange when he heard her weird words. Immediately, Chen Lang realized that their situation was very embarrassing, and even wanted to avoid it. However, he just stood up from the water and felt a whirl of heaven and earth, and his whole body involuntarily fell on the beautiful body of the woman. The woman couldn't help but screamed again, and hurriedly rejected with both hands, pushing Chen Lang over and over in the hot water. The woman hurriedly escaped from the pool and ran behind the screen. At this time, all the feelings of shyness, anger, and panic filled the woman's heart, making her at a loss. When the woman heard there was no movement in the pool outside the screen, she couldn't help feeling a little strange, so she carefully poked her head out to check, and saw that the uninvited guest who fell from the sky was still lying on her back in the pool, motionless. The woman couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. "Then I realized that I was still naked, my cheeks blushed, and I quickly picked up the long dress behind the screen and put it on." After a while, she walked out wearing a creamy white narrow-waisted long skirt. Her body looks like a swaying yushu with loose hair and crystal drops of water. Under the background of the scorching heat, she was as beautiful as an illusion. It seems true, like Chang'e in the Moon Palace, a fairy concubine in the sky. The woman gathered up the courage to walk to the pool and saw the man floating on the water with her eyes closed and motionless, but she couldn't help but became worried. She hurriedly called, "Hey! Are you okay?" However, the other party did not move. The woman hurriedly walked to the pool, reached out her hand to grab his clothes, and tried all her strength to drag him up from the pool. With a sudden click, the man's clothes were torn off, and the woman fell to the ground by surprise. At this moment, there was a rush of footsteps outside, and came to the door to stop, followed by a middle-aged man's anxious voice, "Miss, what's the matter?" The woman hurriedly called, "Uncle Chiaofu, come in and help." The door was knocked open immediately, and a strong middle-aged man led a large group of people rushing in with sticks and knives. The woman pointed to the man in the pool and yelled, "Hurry up and get him!" Everyone was surprised to see a man lying in the bathtub where their eldest lady was bathing. Without thinking about it, he hurried over and grabbed the man from the pool with his hands. Only then did the woman clearly see the man's pure upper body, and she couldn't help being shocked on the spot. I saw that the man's body was densely covered with various scars, most of which were old wounds, but some of them were new ones. It was really shocking. A servant could not help but exclaimed, "My dear! Who is this? There are so many scars." The middle-aged man named Xiao Fu said in an angry manner, "Stop talking nonsense, and take him to the guest room first. This man, it seems that the injury is serious. Xiao Mu, go and invite the doctor in the village." A young man responded and ran down. Others carried Chen Lang down. OZW.com. Xiao Fu walked up to the woman, looked at the hole in the roof and the messy pool, and wanted to ask the eldest lady, but felt that this kind of thing seemed difficult to ask by herself, so he bowed and said, "Miss." Frightened. "Miss, hurry back to the room and rest. I will find out the identity of this person later." The woman was losing her mind. After hearing Xiao Fu's words, she came back to her senses and nodded absent-mindedly. Turning his head to look at the hole in the roof, doubts arose in his heart. Temporarily cleared up my mood, turned around and went. Xiao Fu personally sent the woman back to the boudoir, arranged for several handmaid caretakers, and then went to report to the master. At this moment, a woman who looked very similar to that woman hurriedly came to the woman's boudoir, saw the woman, and quickly stepped forward and asked with concern, "Sister, what's the matter? Are you okay?" The woman who looks similar to her is her sister. The older sister held her younger sister's hands, shook her head, and said, "I'm fine, don't worry." Seeing that her sister was unharmed, the sister couldn't help letting go of her hanging heart. Suddenly, doubts came to my mind and asked, "Sister, what's the matter?" Turning to look at her own maid, she said angeredly, "Xiao Kui came to report in a panic, but couldn't make it clear." The maid named Xiao Kui stuck her tongue out. My sister thought of what happened just now, and couldn't help Xiao Fei cheeks, and said, "It's nothing, don't ask." Chen Lang opened his eyes and was surprised to find that he was in an antique room. I sat up from the bed, patted his head, looked around again, and couldn't help muttering, "Where am I? Is it a hospital? It doesn't look like it." Chen Lang remembered what had happened not long ago. He smashed through the roof and fell into a pool. At that time, there was a woman who was so beautiful that she was bathing in the pool. Chen Lang laughed and murmured, "I must be dreaming, how could such a strange thing happen?" Then Chen Lang thought that his brothers had already been killed, he couldn't help but sighed with sorrow. However, Chen Lang quickly suppressed the grief. As the saying goes, it is inevitable that a strong man will die before battle. Now that he has taken this path, such an outcome has long been expected. Chen Lang cleared up his mood. I saw the meteorite fragment on the coffee table beside the bed, but it was broken into several pieces. Chen Lang frowned, picked up a fragment and looked at it, and found that the meteorite fragment had lost the peculiar luster it used to be. It was like an ordinary stone that could be seen everywhere, and it was no longer unique. Chen Lang put the fragments back on the coffee table and said with a wry smile, "Damn! With so many people dead, the meteorite is actually ruined." Chen Lang looked at the light coming in from outside the window, and felt that it should be almost noon. Chen Lang wanted to go for a walk, so he got off the bed. When his feet were on the ground, Chen Lang felt a little dizzy in his head and some pain in his body, but the overall feeling was not bad. Suddenly, Chen Lang found that the clothes he was wearing were very weird, just like the ancient costumes he had seen in film and television dramas. Chen Lang couldn't help laughing and cursing, "Damn! Which hospital is this that engages in these weird things?" After finishing his clothes, he walked to the door. At this time, Chen Lang was surprised to find that the door of the room was not what he was familiar with. It turned out to be an ancient bolt-style wooden door. Chen Lang opened the door with his stomach full of questions, and saw two burly men who were also dressed in ancient costumes standing by the door one by one, and he couldn't help being taken aback. When the two strong men heard the movement behind them, they turned their heads together, looking at Chen Lang with some vigilance and some hostility. Seeing that the two of them looked bad, Chen Lang said angrily, "What are you two doing here?" The two looked at each other suspiciously, and one of them grumbled a word in a very rude manner. Chen Lang was taken aback for a moment, and secretly said, "Damn, where is this bird's language?" After thinking about it, I felt that the other party spoke a bit like an incomprehensible dialect in the mountains of Jiangsu and Zhejiang. However, Chen Lang's army included people from Jiangsu and Zhejiang. He had listened to the dialects of Jiangsu and Zhejiang before. At this time, he basically understood the other party's meaning after thinking about it. The other party was admonishing him not to leave the room. Chen Lang became angry and cursed, "I'm not a prisoner, why don't you allow me to leave the room?" He said that he stepped forward and wanted to go out. The two burly men stared, and raised their hands to push Chen Lang together. Chen Lang sneered in his heart, and immediately raised his hands to grasp the palm of the opponent pushed over, then lifted his right foot and kicked on the ankle of the strong man on the left. The strong man fell to the ground with a scream. The other brawny man was taken aback when he saw this, yelled, and raised his other fist to hit Chen Lang. However, Chen Lang's speed was even faster. Before the opponent's fist touched him, his right foot kicked and hit the strong man's waist heavily. The strong man screamed and fell off the steps, unable to get up for a long time. The two brawny men were shocked and yelled one after another. Immediately, more than a dozen strong men in costumes armed with weapons such as clubs and long knives rushed in from the arch not far away and surrounded Chen Lang. Chen Lang was shocked when he saw this scene, his head was lost, and he couldn't figure out where he was. At this time, if someone told him that this was a hospital, he would not believe it if he was killed. How could there be a hospital like this? Chen Lang frowned and shouted, "Damn! Where are your grandsons from? What place is this?" Everyone looked at each other, and the leader pointed at Chen Lang and shouted angrily. Chen Lang thought for a while, and understood what the other party meant, and the other party was asking who he was. Chen Lang couldn't help being amused, and when he glanced at these guys, the blood on his body couldn't help but boil. He just wanted to do a big job. At this moment, a few more people swarmed in from the arch. Chen Lang looked towards the archway, and saw that this time he was an old man with a crane-haired childlike appearance and kind temperament. A group of men and women surrounded him. One of them was a woman in a moon-white ancient dress that shocked Chen Lang's heart. It looked exactly like the woman in his absurd dream. "Stop! Stop!" The old man screamed while raising his right hand while walking quickly. The group of people soon came to Chen Lang. The old man took a look at Chen Lang, and he was secretly surprised when he saw his upright physique and extremely strong temperament. He originally had a judgment about the identity of the other party in his mind, but at this moment his original judgment couldn't help but shake. But Chen Lang was looking at the beautiful girl next to the old man at this time, and his mind was in confusion. Seeing that the other party dared to stare at her, the woman couldn't help being annoyed, and shouted, "You disciple, you dare to be so bold at this moment?" Chen Lang couldn't help but feel that the woman's accent also had a strong accent. The taste of the place, but it has a moving charm, which makes people can't help but feel rippling. Chen Lang came back to his senses, thought about the woman's words, understood what the other party meant, and said in amazement, "Deng's disciple? You said I was a pervert." Chen Lang thought of the scene in the bathroom immediately, and said secretly, "Isn't that a dream? It turned out to be true?" Then another question rushed to Chen Lang's distraction, "Deng the disciple? Isn't this what the ancients called a satyr? What are these people doing?" Chen Lang glanced at the people in front of him, only to feel that something was wrong here. The old man told the woman to stay calm, and then stepped forward and said to Chen Lang, "I think the morale of the strong is extraordinary, and it is definitely not a young man who is a bitch, but why does it break into the little girl's bathroom late at night?" Chen Lang thought for a while and understood what the other party meant. He looked at the postures of the brawny men with finger sticks and long swords around him, and realized that they had misunderstood. He immediately explained, "Old man, that was just an accident, Chen Lang wanted to explain the whole thing, but suddenly found that the whole thing was really difficult to explain. "Didn't you perform missions in Africa? Why did you come here suddenly? Where is this place again?" Then Chen Lang thought of the peculiar halo created by the meteorite fragments and the black hole that followed. Chen Lang suddenly broke out in cold sweat, and he felt as if something incredible had happened. The woman said angrily to the old man, "Look, father, he can't justify himself. He is clearly a nasty disciple. He came for his sister that night. Fortunately, his treacherous tricks did not succeed. My sister is safe and sound. We should send him to the government." The old man was thinking. Chen Lang listened to the woman's words, thought for a moment, and understood what she meant, frowning and muttering, "Government? These people speak exactly like the ancients, and their clothes are like the ancients. Is that possible? A meteorite fragment took me to ancient times." At this point, Chen Lang couldn't believe it. Immediately thinking of what kind of government the other party is going to hand over to himself, he can't help but frown. He will never be so slaughtered. OZW.com Chen Lang glanced at the crowd around him, and immediately formulated a battle plan in his heart. "If you move your hands, you will immediately subdue the nearest strong man, take his long knife, and then rush to the old man to take him as a hostage, and rush out to talk." The old man raised his head to look at Chen Lang, and said, "It seems that this can only be done." When Chen Lang heard this, he was ready to do it. However, at this moment, a chaotic shout came from outside, with exclamations and screams in it. Everyone present couldn't help being taken aback, and Chen Lang was even more surprised. At this moment, I saw a sturdy man covered in blood stumbled in, and fell in front of the old man with a thump, shouting anxiously, "It's not good, my lord. Jin Fan Thief is here." Everyone was shocked, and the old man couldn't care about dealing with Chen Lang. He hurriedly shouted at everyone, "Quickly, come out with me." A large group of people rushed out of the arch anxiously. Chen Lang felt that a huge change had taken place here, and only felt that it was not appropriate to stay here for a long time. Immediately turned around and ran into the room, and quickly put on the battle suit that had been taken off from him on the bedside. Then the meteorite fragments that had been broken into several pieces were put into a bullet bag on the battle uniform, and the room was quickly removed. When Chen Lang came out of the arch, he saw that the whole old-fashioned courtyard was in chaos. There were men and women running in panic, and screams everywhere. Some fierce men with red scarfs and were chasing people who fled. When they caught up with the man, they slashed on the spot, and when they caught up with the woman, grabbed it and carried it on his shoulders and laughed. Chen Lang frowned and wanted to leave here immediately. However, his consciousness as a soldier made him involuntarily make the opposite behavior. He turned to a red man who was carrying a woman on his shoulders not far away and laughing. The man with a scarf rushed over. The man in the red scarf suddenly found a man in strange clothes rushing towards him, and he was taken aback. Then he grinned, and without putting down the woman with his left hand, he raised the long knife with his right hand and smashed it at Chen Lang. Chen Lang quickly dodged sideways, and the blade slashed against his face. The man in the red scarf was taken aback when he saw that the knife had been avoided by the opponent. Before he could react, Chen Lang had rushed behind the man in the red scarf and tied his neck. The man in the red scarf was horrified. Even if he wanted to struggle, it was too late. Chen Lang slammed his arms to one side, only to hear a crackling sound, and the man in the red scarf broke his head instantly and died. This move is a killer move commonly used by special forces, broken the throat. The body of the man in the red scarf fell to the ground, and the woman also fell to the ground. The whole person was stunned on the spot, with a frightened look. Chen Lang picked up the long knife left by the man in the red scarf and said to the woman, "Hurry up and find a safe place to hide." The woman looked at Chen Lang and suddenly recovered. She grabbed Chen Lang's arm abruptly, and begged, "Please save the master and the lady. Please save the master and the lady." Chen Lang frowned. At this moment, he couldn't even tell him to stand by. He asked, "Where are your young lady and the master?" The woman immediately pointed to several buildings in the distance and said, "Master and Miss, they are all blocked there." Chen Lang glanced in the direction of her finger, then turned around and said, "Hurry up and hide." The woman held on to Chen Lang's arm and exclaimed excitedly, "You promise me to save them. You promise me to save them." Chen Lang couldn't help feeling a little bit, and nodded, "I promised." The woman felt relieved when she heard this. Chen Lang asked the woman to leave and hide, and then ran towards the place the woman was guiding. But Chen Lang only ran a few steps before stopping. I saw him quickly return to the man he had killed, dragging him into the bushes aside. After a while, only a man with a red scarf and bear got out of the bush, but it was Chen Lang. Holding the steel knife, Chen Lang ran in the direction pointed by the woman just now, and came to a separate courtyard. As soon as I entered the yard, I saw a lot of people gathered in the yard. A dozen corpses were lying on the ground, and they were all dressed in the nursing home of the servants. The old man I saw not long ago, the two beautiful women, and a few other people were standing in front of a wooden building. They all looked terribly frightened. They should all be the owners of this house. Chen Lang's eyes couldn't help but fell on the pair of beautiful sisters. He was very surprised. He couldn't believe that there should be such a pair of women who are so beautiful that they are not as beautiful as humans. It seems that the beauty of the heavens and the earth are all gathered. It's like on their bodies. "Father, I am not here to harm you, but to form a family with you." A wild and blatant voice came into Chen Lang's ears. Chen Lang retracted his thoughts and followed his reputation. He saw dozens of men with red scarfs and sackcloth and bear surrounded the family in an arc. The leader was naked and draped in his hair, with Qing Long tattooed on his body. With a string of bells hanging around his waist, and a scimitar still dripping blood in his hand. Although he can't see his face from Chen Lang's perspective, Chen Lang can still clearly feel his body. That strong and arrogant aura was like a bloodthirsty and ferocious wolf standing there. Chen Lang couldn't help but moved his heart and walked towards him slowly. The old man's family was shocked when he heard what the man said. The old man stepped forward, bowed slightly, and said, "It's our honor for a strong man to value our family, but there are obstacles in it. I'm afraid the old family there is no way to become a strong man." The man uttered a loud voice and asked, "What's the obstacle?" The old man pointed to his pair of daughters and said, "The strong man may not know it. The two old daughters have already made a marriage with the grandson of Chang Sha and Zhou Lang of Luoyang. Therefore, the old man cannot accept the good intentions of the strong man." The old man's little daughter summoned up the courage to step forward and loudly said, "You really ate the bear heart and leopard courage to violate our house. Zhou Lang and Sun Lang will never let you go." The man laughed and said contemptuously, "Do you think that you can frighten Lao Tzu by lifting Sun Ce Zhou Yu? The Emperor Lao Tzu doesn't pay attention to it, let alone two boys whose hairs are not even grown." The old man's family, when people heard this, they couldn't help but change their complexion, and they all felt overwhelmed. The man's eyes turned around on the beautiful pair of sisters Hua, squinting, and smiled evilly, "When I and you are in the bridal chamber, I will send invitations to Sun Ce Zhou Yu, so that the two boys will also happy." All the men also laughed in disbelief, while the old man's family was scared to death. The man slapped his face and said, "Okay, don't talk nonsense. Let's go with me. I don't want to be rough with my wife and my wife's mother-in-law." Faced with this scene, People can't help shivering, like a group of sheep surrounded by wolves. Their miserable fate seems to be about to begin. Seeing the green hats of Sun Ce and Zhou Yu, this time they can't escape. Hey? Who are you? A young man behind the man called out suddenly. The man couldn't help turning around. Awesomely saw a tall man had arrived in front of him, and kicked the little boy who had just spoken out. The man was shocked and wanted to do it subconsciously. However, the opponent is faster, the scimitar in the man's hand is only half lifted, and the opponent's long knife has been placed on his neck. Everyone exploded immediately, and the sound of exclamation and curse became a whole. The man who suddenly took control of the man was not someone else, but Chen Lang. Chen Lang disguised himself as this group of water pirates and approached the man quietly, who was caught off guard by Chen Lang's trick. The man was frightened and angry, yelling, "Fuck, you attacked me!" Chen Lang immediately removed the scimitar in the man's hand, and immediately wrapped his left hand around his neck, and put the long knife across his neck with his right hand, and said, "If you let the people here, I will let you go." The man's eyes widened, and he cursed, "I'm your ancestor." Then he shouted at his men, "What are you doing in a daze? Give it to me and chop him up." Chen Lang was taken aback. He unexpectedly, this guy was still so sturdy when he was controlled by himself. This was the first time he encountered this situation. When the men heard the boss's call, they subconsciously wanted to do it, but seeing that the boss was under the control of the opponent's blade, they didn't dare to act rashly, and they were at a loss for a moment. The man yelled at Chen Lang fiercely, "If you have a seed, kill Lao Tzu. Don't you want to leave here alive?" Chen Lang smiled and said, "Aren't you afraid of death?" The man roared, "Don't talk nonsense with Lao Tzu. If you have any kind, just cut it down." Chen Lang looked at the fierce-looking man, then at the chilling old man's family, and finally at the dozens of fierce pirates surrounding him. At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on him, and the atmosphere on the scene was very tense. Although Chen Lang controlled the situation was still critical. OZW.com Chen Lang suddenly removed the long knife and let go of the man. When everyone saw this, they were all taken aback. The man broke away from Chen Lang's control, quickly turned around, looked at Chen Lang with a puzzled expression, and asked angrily, "What the do you mean?" Chen Lang smiled and said, "I think you are a man and don't want to kill you. But if you want to kill me and everyone here, it's up to you." After speaking, he threw the long knife in his hand to the ground. At this moment, the old man's family has become desolate. The second young lady kept scolding Chen Lang as stupid in her heart. She thought that the bad guy should not be let go anyway. What to do now? Everyone has become at the mercy of others. All the water thieves screamed and hugged to smash Chen Lang into his body. "Stop!" The guy suddenly raised his hand and shouted. The water thief couldn't help but stop and looked at him puzzled. The man walked up to Chen Lang, looked at Chen Lang, and said loudly, "I owe you a life, if I kill you, I am nothing." Then he yelled at his men, "Fuck me away. Here, don't come back again." Then he strode out. All the water thieves were depressed when they saw this, but since the boss had decided, how dare they defy them, so they also left. Seeing that a huge crisis disappeared in an instant, the old man's family felt unbelievable, and then all of them felt exhausted. Qiaomu staggered and almost sat down on the ground. Xiao Fu rushed in and said with infinite joy, "Master, those Jinfan thieves are gone, and they have left all their belongings, only some food." After hearing the words, everyone was completely relieved. The old man's family walked in front of Chen Lang. The old man bowed to Chen Lang, and the family behind him also bowed. The old man raised his head and said with infinite gratitude, "Thanks to the strong man. Otherwise. The old man couldn't help feeling lingering when he thought of the terrible consequences. Chen Lang said, "Old man, goodbye." The old man and his family were taken aback. Seeing Chen Lang turn around, the old man hurried forward and shouted, "The strong man stays! The strong man stays!" Chen Lang couldn't stop, turned around and joked, "Could the old man want to put me under house arrest?" The old man said with embarrassment, the strong man said and laughed. Then he said apologetically, before the old man was rude, "Please don't blame the strong man." Chen Lang felt embarrassed when he saw him like this. Chen Lang glanced at the pair of grateful sisters behind the old man, and said to the old man, "Although it was a misunderstanding before, I am very sorry. Now we are both clear." The old man said very sincerely, "Please also ask the strong man to stay for a few days, so that the old man will respect the friendship of the landlord and repay the strong man a little bit for his life-saving grace." Seeing the old man's gracious fist, Chen Lang couldn't refuse, so he nodded. The old man was overjoyed, and then ordered Jiao Fu to prepare a banquet. He wanted to entertain the strong man who had saved their family. Chen Lang stayed in the old man's house, and the old man's family was hospitalized, and several days passed without knowing it. During this time, Chen Lang learned that the owner of this house, that is, the old man whose surname was Zhou, was well known in the local area, and he was called Master Chiao. And his beautiful pair of sister flowers turned out to be the most famous and outstanding beauty in history, the younger and the younger Zhou. He actually came to the Three Kingdoms era. That night, Master Chiao graciously hosted Chen Lang again. After the banquet, Chen Lang went back to his residence alone, sitting on the stone bench and staring at the moon in the sky in a daze. Although it has been several days since I came into this world, Chen Lang felt like he was dreaming, and everything seemed so unreal. Chen Lang Qing couldn't help sighing, and took a sip of the wine. For Chen Lang, the wine of this era is not much different from fruit juice. It is a bit close to sweet wine and cannot be compared with later generations of white wine. Ding dong, ding ding dong dong. The melodious sound of the guqin came from the bed upstairs in the distance. Chen Lang couldn't help but follow the prestige, and the graceful figure shown by the lights was faintly visible, as if looking at the fairy in the heaven from the world. There is the boudoir of Jiao and Chiao. Chen Lang couldn't help but sigh with those two beautiful faces in his mind. Chen Lang has never seen them since the second Chiao came out to accompany the banquet on the first day. In the wilderness at night, an army suddenly appeared, rushing towards the Qiajiazhuang courtyard along the mountain road. The two leading men wore armor cloaks. One was superbly heroic, as if Xiang Yu was reborn, and the other was handsome and elegant, like a man in a fairy. Both of them are obviously extraordinary people. Chiao Fuxing rushed to the front of Mr. Chiao, and said excitedly, "Master, General Sun and Mr. Zhou are here." Old man Chiao was talking to his wife, and when he heard this, the two old men were overjoyed. Mr. Chiao quickly said, "Please." Chiao Fu responded and ran down. Mrs. Chiao said, "Master, did you call both Chiao and Xiao Chiao?" Mrs. Chiao smiled and nodded, "Of course, that is of course. Call them." Mrs. Chiao laughed, "Big Chiao and Xiao Chiao will be very happy to hear this." Mrs. Chiao said, and she hurried down. Father Chiao hurriedly came to the hall. Seeing that Sun Ce and Zhou Yu were already sitting in the hall, they hurriedly stepped forward and said with a smile, "I don't know if the two wise nephews are coming here, there is a lost distance to welcome." The two hurriedly stood up and clasped their fists. "My nephew visits my uncle." Old man Chiao smiled and nodded, "Okay. We are a family, so you are welcome. Sit down." The two thanked them and sat back. At this time, a maidservant brought up wine and food and retreated. Sun Ce hurriedly asked, "Uncle, I heard that the Jinfan thief came to disturb me not long ago. I wonder if my uncle and aunt and De Chiao and Xiao Chiao were frightened?" Elder Chiao thought of the situation at the time. He couldn't help but linger. He sighed and said, "At last there is no danger." Then he said, "Thanks to Chen Zhuangxi, otherwise the consequences will be really disastrous." Sun Ce and Zhou Yu heard that everyone was okay, so they were relieved. Zhou Yu asked curiously, who is this hero Chen? Old man Chiao said, he is a guest at our house, as for what he did for a living, I don't know. Sun Ce and Zhou Yu are not surprised, because in this era, there are many people who have a lot of talents who have passed away and become doorsteps, relying on their little ability to buy themselves a share of food and clothing, even prosperity and wealth. Mr. Chiao's family can be regarded as the Zhonghui clan, and it is normal to have a clientele. Zhou Yu said, since this person can push back Jinfan thief Ganning, he has some abilities to come. Having said that, Zhou Yu's expression doesn't seem to be too caring. At this time, there was a ringing sound at the side door. Sun Ce and Zhou Yu hurriedly looked towards the side door, only to see two peerless beauties dressed in moon-white palace costumes, hair combs, fairy clouds all over the country, coming in through the side door accompanied by Mrs. Chiao. The two immediately stood up and their eyes brightened, and they said together, "How are you doing, Miss?" Chiao, the second Chiao, was blushing with her beautiful face and drooping eyes, and bowed, "How well is the general?" Mrs. Chiao smiled slightly and led the two daughters to the Xi in opposite Sun Ce Zhou Yu and knelt down. She walked to Master Chiao and knelt down. Xiao Er Chiao secretly glanced at the opposing lover, seeing that they were also looking at him, couldn't help but feel ashamed and happy. Master Chiao and Mrs. Chiao looked at the expressions of the children of these two teams, and were delighted in their hearts, and smiled at each other. Sun Ce looked away and said to Mr. Chiao, "Uncle, Jinfan thief dare to disturb Qia Jia's Wang, my nephew will never let them go. When my nephew finishes the matter at hand, he directs his father to order the army to kill him." The gang of Jinfan thief. When De Chiao saw Sun Xiang's vigor, he couldn't help being infatuated. Xiao Chiao couldn't help saying, "If General Sun can kill them, it would be a bad breath for us." "General Sun, you don't know how hateful that Gan Ning is, he actually wants to capture me and my sister and become him. Where's Mrs. Yazai?" When Sun Ce heard this, he was furious, and his right fist slammed into the case, with a loud bang, and saw him yelling, "If you don't cut Gan Ning 1,000 times, I will not be a man, Sun Ce." Zhou Yu also looked very angry. De Chiao calmed Sun Ce and said, "The general doesn't have to be so angry, the culprit did not succeed in the end." Sun Ce glanced at De Chiao's stunning face, and said angrily, "The culprit has such a mind and deserves 1,000 deaths. I can't spare him." De Chiao didn't say anything anymore when he saw it. In fact, De Chiao's, "I am still very happy, after all, my lover is so close to him." De Chiao's eyes showed infinite gratitude, and said, "Thanks to Chen's Wangshi, if it were not for him to help, the consequences would be really unthinkable." Sun Ce frowned and looked a little unhappy. De Chiao didn't notice Sun Ce's expression, and said to Sun Ce, "General, I think this hero Chen is courageous and strategic. He is a rare talent. It is better for the general to take him under his account. He will definitely become one of the generals. Great help." Sun Ce said in an unpleasant manner, "A mere doorman, what can I do?" De Chiao touched a grey nose, and his beautiful eyes couldn't help showing a grieved expression. He didn't understand why Sun Lang behaved like this. OZW.com Seeing that her sister had been wronged, Xiao Qiao couldn't help but said, "General, what the sister said is true. That Zhuangxi Chen is indeed wise and brave, so many Jinfan thieves were forced to retreat by himself." Sun Ce was a little uncomfortable. He looked impatient, and Zhou Yu frowned, and also looked a little unhappy. Xiao Qiao didn't notice the expressions of the two of them, and continued, "We thought of him as a Niadeng disciple, but I didn't expect." "Little Zhou!" Father Zhou suddenly shouted. Xiao Qiao couldn't help but stop and looked at his father. Old man Qiao glared at Xiao Qiao, and then smiled and took the wine glass to Sun Ce and Zhou Yu and said, "Two wise nephews, let's not gossip. Come, come and have a drink." The two picked up the wine glasses and had a drink with Mr. Zhou, but they were suspicious. The words Xiao Qiao said just now made them unable to let go. He started to treat that person as a disciple. What is going on? After the banquet, Mr. Qiao asked Qiao Fu to take Sun Ce and Zhou Yu to the guest room to rest. On the way, Sun Ce asked Qiao Fu, "Who is that Zhuangxi Chen? Why did Miss Xiao Qiao say that he was a disciple in the first place?" Qiao Fu looked in a dilemma when he heard this. Upon seeing this, Zhou Yu said, "Just tell us that we will not treat you badly. As for Uncle Qiao, he will never know what you told us." Qiao Fu hurriedly said, "The general and the son are inquiring, how dare the villain conceal it?" After a pause, he looked around, and said in a low voice, "In fact, this strongman Chen came very strangely. He fell from the sky that night. Yes, I smashed through the roof of the bathroom and fell into the bathroom. At that time. Seeing Qiao Fu's hesitation, Sun Ce said grumpily, "Say it." Qiao Fu didn't dare to hide it, saying, "At that time, Miss Qiao was bathing in the bathroom." Zhou Yu was taken aback, and Sun Ce was furious when he heard this, and shouted, "Asshole! I'm going to kill him." Qiao Fu was so frightened that he didn't dare to speak any more. Zhou Yu quickly held down Sun Ce and said, "Brother Sun, calm down, don't be impulsive." Sun Ce exclaimed excitedly, "If I don't kill him, would Sun Ce still be a man?" Zhou Yu immediately said, "You must kill you, but you can't do it here. After all, he has the salvation of his uncle, aunt, and the two young ladies." Sun Ce exclaimed, "What kind of salvation? I think he has ulterior motives. When such a thing happened, why did Miss Qiao still defend him? I am really angry." Qiao Fu looked at Sun Ce in a rage. The atmosphere dare not come out. Zhou Yu said, "Brother Sun, why should I be angry with this kind of person? We will clean him up sooner or later." Sun Ce frowned, looked at Zhou Yu, and asked, "What can you do?" Zhou Yu smiled and said, "It's too easy to get rid of him, but we can't do anything here. Let's let our uncle drive him away first, and then send someone to ambush. Even if he has 9 lives, he can't escape our palms." Sun Ce was overjoyed and nodded, "Just do it. I'm going to kill him personally." Zhou Yu shook his head and said, "No, we'd better not come out personally on this matter." Sun Ce hesitated and nodded, "Just listen to you." Zhou Yu turned his head to Qiao Fu, who was anxious and said, "Did you hear what we said just now?" Qiao Fu nodded subconsciously, then reacted, his face pale in fright, and quickly shook his head, No. I heard nothing. I heard nothing." Zhou Yu smiled and nodded, "Very good, no, it's fine to hear. If this matter reaches the ears of the two young ladies, you should know the consequences." Qiao Fu's legs were so frightened, he fell to his knees with a plop, and said anxiously, "The little one is absolutely not dare. Absolutely not. The little ones don't know anything." Zhou Yu smiled slightly. In the early morning of the next day, Chen Lang practiced the martial arts boxing in his yard as usual. This is a habit he has always cultivated. Father Zhou came in from the outside. Behind him were 2 sturdy servants carrying a big red wooden box. Chen Lang stopped practicing boxing when he saw that Mr. Qiao had come in. Old man Qiao came up and said with a smile, "Although the old man doesn't understand boxing, he can feel a mighty aura when he sees Chen Zhuangxi practicing boxing. Chen Zhuangxi is really a rare warrior in the world." Chen Lang smiled and said, "It's nothing." Then he glanced at the 2 strong men who were following Mr. Qiao, and asked Mr. Qiao, "Old man, what's the matter with you who came to see me so early in the morning?" Father Qiao showed a look of embarrassment, and said, "The old man wanted to let the strong man live in our house, so that the old man Liao could repay the great kindness of the strong man. But, alas, I really don't know how to speak about this matter." "Ah!" Chen Lang was confused by him. Elder Chia raised his head to look at Chen Lang, and said infinitely apologetic, I am afraid there is no way to keep strong men here. Elder Chiao said these words, only feeling shameless, afraid to look at Chen Lang's eyes, and lowered his head. Chen Lang didn't feel bad when he heard the words of Mr. Chiao. He actually wanted to leave a long time ago, but he didn't feel good to refute the warmth of Chiao's family, so he stayed. However, Chen Lang felt a little strange about this, and asked, "Master, what happened?" Father Chiao hesitated for a moment, then raised his head and said, "Last night, 2 wise nephews Sun Ce and Zhou Yu came." Chen Lang's heart moved. Chen Lang has long liked these 2 famous figures in history. Some people think that Sun Ce and Zhou Yu are narrow-spirited, but Chen Lang has not viewed it that way. They think that it is just a way of slandering them. The saying goes so well that they are mediocre. It is precisely because Sun Ce and Zhou Yu are heroes that they have with so many people slandering them. Sun Ce and Zhou Yu are definitely the most outstanding figures of the era of the 3 kingdoms. Chen Lang couldn't help but feel a little strange. Is it because he had to leave here to be related to Sun Ce and Zhou Yu? This is simply irrelevant. Just listen to the old man Chiao said, the 2 wise nephews seem to have big prejudices against the strong men. There is no way for the old to have no choice but to. Chen Lang understood that it was because of Sun Ce and Zhou Yu that Father Chiao came to chase him away early in the morning. But he hasn't seen them before, how can they be so hostile to him? Chen Lang didn't understand, and didn't bother to figure it out. Seeing his ashamed look, he smiled and said, "Master, you don't have to feel guilty, and you have done nothing wrong." Father Zhou shook his head and said, "The strong man said that." The old man is even more embarrassed. Chen Lang said, "Master, I'm leaving." Then Chen Lang returned to the room to pack his luggage. Chen Lang didn't have any salutes, only the battle suit he had brought from another world and the small pile of meteorite fragments that looked like ordinary stones, and they were all sorted out soon after saluting. Elder Chiao led the 2 strong men in carrying the big wooden box and said to Chen Lang, "Strong man, the old man is really very guilty." Then he pointed to the wooden box and said, "The great kindness of the strong man. The old man has nothing to pay for, and asked the strong men to accept these gold and silver jewels." As he said, he opened the wooden box, and the jewels immediately reflected on Chen Lang's face. Chen Lang looked at the full box of gold and silver jewels and was shocked. He had never seen so many gold and silver jewels in his dreams. Chen Lang came back to his senses and smiled and said to Mr. Chiao, "I understand Mr. Chiao's kindness, but I don't want these." Elder Chiao looked uncomfortable and said, "If the strong man does not accept the old man's thoughts, how can the old man feel at ease?" Chen Lang said, "It's too inconvenient for me to take so many gold and silver jewelry on the road. If the old man wants to repay me, he can give me a good horse and some dry food and water." Old man Zhou had no choice but to order. Nodding, immediately ordered. A horse wanders above the wilderness alone, with a clear blue sky and slender white clouds above its head, green trees and green grass beside it, a clear stream not far away, gurgling, and the sound of water, the sound of chirping with birds, like a natural sound, is refreshing. Chen Lang lay on the horse's back and drank the wine leisurely, without controlling the horse, trusting the horse to swim on the rain, let it go forward. The horse under Chen Lang's body was as dark as painted, and his body was very tall. At first glance, he looked like an extraordinary Liangzhu. This was the mount given to him by Mr. Chiao. The horse was named Heilong. It is said to be a Dewan Liangzhu from the western regions. However, what Chen Lang didn't know was that this horse was originally intended to be given to Sun Ce by Mr. Chiao as De Chiao's dowry, but now it has become his mount for Chen Lang. At this moment, there was a rapid sound of horseshoes behind him. Chen Lang lay on his horse and turned his head to look around. He saw dozens of people who looked like ancient soldiers riding their horses. Chen Lang immediately thought of Sun Ce and Zhou Yu, and murmured, "These soldiers should be Sun Ce and Zhou Yu's men. What are they going to do when they come so fast?" Between words and thoughts, the group of cavalry rushed to the front, and they actually surrounded Chen Lang. Chen Lang sat up from his horse, put down the hip flask, pressed his right hand on the handle of the knife, and asked, "What do you want to do?" The leading officer took a look at Chen Lang and asked, "Are you Chen Lang?" "Not bad." The officer's eyes lit up and said, "We are looking for you. Do you want to end it yourself or do you want us to do it?" Chen Lang frowned and asked, "Sun Ce Zhou Yu sent you?" OZW.com. The officer said, "Yes, it was General Sun and young Master Zhou who sent us to take your life." Then the officer showed a mocking look, and said, "You really have a long life too, dare to offend our General Sun." Chen Lang heard what the officer said, only to feel extremely disappointed. Chen Lang used to like the heroes in the romance of the Three Kingdoms very much, but Chen Lang's preferences may not be the same as most people. For the advisors of the Three Kingdoms, Chen Lang does not like Zhuge who is similar to a demon, but prefers the gentle and elegant Zhou Yu. General, Chen Lang loves Sun Ce's man with a true temperament. However, after he really met these two favorite sergeants and generals at this time, he felt extremely disappointed. The two of them and his image were too far apart. Chen Lang Qing couldn't help but sighed. Seeing Chen Lang sighed, the officer thought he was scared, and mocked, "It's too late to regret now. In the next life, please show your tricks. Don't offend someone you can't offend." Chen Lang smiled, and suddenly raised his hand to the officer. The officer only felt a flash of cold in front of him, and felt a chill in his throat before he understood what was going on, and then he turned over and dropped his horse. The others were shocked when they saw it, but at this time, Chen Lang had already urged the horse to rush towards the woods not far away. The two soldiers who stood in front of Chen Lang hurriedly tried to stop them, but they had no time to react, and Chen Lang rushed across and rushed into the woods. All the officers and soldiers reacted and immediately yelled angrily under the leadership of another officer and chased up. Both sides sank into the dense forest one after another. All the officers and soldiers chased into the dense forest, and immediately lost the trace of Chen Lang. The officer only felt a little annoyed, and shouted, "Search separately, you can't let him run." So dozens of soldiers separated in groups to search for Chen Lang in all directions. When these dozens of officers and soldiers gathered together, they seemed to be crowded, but when they were scattered in the woods, it seemed as if a drop of water fell into the pond, and instantly seemed to disappear without a trace. The noise of the clamor also seemed to quiet down instantly, and only the sound of the wind blowing leaves and the chirping of birds reverberated in the air. A team of 4 soldiers descended from a small slope. The woods are dense here, and although the sun is shining outside, it looks very gloomy here, with thick litter covering the ground, and people walking on it seem to be walking on a soft cushion. The captain is true too. How far must that guy ran, so that he might still stay in the woods? A soldier mumbled. An older soldier next to him said grumpily, "Stop talking nonsense and open my eyes a little bit." The 4 soldiers descended below Xiapo. At this moment, they didn't notice it. Not far behind them, the thick dead branches gradually separated, and Chen Lang appeared. Chen Lang bit the spine of the ring-head knife with his mouth, and pulled out 2 steel needles from his waist with both hands. Steel needle, a special equipment of Chinese special forces, is often used in assassination occasions. A few days ago, Chen Lang stayed in Qiao's house and was bored, so he asked the blacksmith of the villa to make more than 100 steel needles for him. Chen Lang aimed at the 2 soldiers walking at the back, throwing out the steel needles with both hands at the same time, and the 2 soldiers screamed and fell. The 2 soldiers walking in the front jumped down and quickly turned around. Surprisingly, he saw Chen Lang swinging his first sword and rushing forward fiercely. The 2 wanted to attack in shock, but a cold light flashed in front of them, and the soldier on the left screamed that he had been chopped to the ground by Chen Lang. The soldier on the right yelled and slashed with the knife. Chen Lang avoided him sideways, and at the same time his left hand slammed around the opponent's arms so that he could not continue the attack. Then the right hand ringed the knife and pierced into the soldier's chest. The soldier died on the spot. At this time, there were hurried shouts and footsteps around. Chen Lang knew that enemies from other places had arrived and left the scene immediately. After a while, the officer and 3 soldiers came to the scene. I was shocked to see the bodies of the 4 companions lying on the ground, dripping blood soaking the surrounding litter. Everyone couldn't help being horrified, and the officer roared angrily, "Where is he? Where is he?" Everyone quickly looked around, but there was no trace of that person. What? Suddenly the screams came again. Everyone was shocked, and the officer pointed to the front left and shouted, "Over there!" Then he rushed to the front left, and everyone followed closely behind. At this time, there were 2 screams in succession. Everyone quickly rushed to the scene, but only saw the corpses of 3 soldiers lying on the ground. The other side was nowhere to be seen. Under the horror of everyone, there was a chill in their hearts, only to feel that this guy was like a ghost. Screams sounded one after another in the woods, and these soldiers died one by one without even seeing Chen Lang. There was silence in the woods. The officer and his 3 soldiers stood among the big trees, looking terrified. A soldier stammered and said, it seems that everyone is dead. Only, we are left." Everyone couldn't help but swallow, and another soldier couldn't help but said, "Who is he? What? So terrible." The officer frowned, raised his head and yelled hysterically, "Come out! You come out! What kind of heroes are hiding in hiding?" Suddenly, the officer felt a sting in his throat, and then he saw Chen Lang and stopped from the front, stepped out from behind the big tree in the distance. The officer opened his eyes, fell on his back, and stared at him. Seeing this scene, the remaining 3 soldiers were frightened. They suspected that they were facing a ghost, otherwise he was in such a close place, why didn't so many people on their side even notice it? Sun Ce paced back and forth in the room irritably, and said angrily, "What the is Li Liu Zhangju? It's been more than a day, but there is no news at all." Zhou Yu was sitting next to him drinking tea, but he looked so self-contained and smiled and said, "Brother Sun, don't worry, Li Liu Zhangju and the 50 soldiers under them are our carefully trained Hengjiang warriors. They are rare in the world. A good soldier, it is not enough to be tense. There will be no difference in this matter. I believe that news will arrive soon." Sun Ce frowned and said, "I still don't worry." Then he shouted, "Come here." Dang! Even a young man with the appearance of an officer rushed in, clasped his fist and said, "What is the general's order?" Sun Ce pointed out. Said, "You immediately catch up with Li Liu Zhangju to see how things are going on with them." The officer promised and ran down. Zhou Yu smiled and said, "Brother Sun is too worried. With the elite of the Yakugawa warriors, who can escape their chase in the world?" At this moment, another military officer rushed in from the outside, looking like a servant, saw Sun Ce and Zhou Yu, immediately gave a military salute, took out a letter and submitted it. "General, the old master has a letter to the general." Sun Ce took the letter from the officer, took out the letter and read it again. He frowned and said, "Father is going to take action against the Yangtze River pirates in advance. Everyone must know Sun Ce's father. Yes, he is Sun Jian, the prefect of Changsha. Since Sun Jian took the lead in Changsha County, he has been recruiting talents and recruits. His ambitions are not small. Now the Sun family not only controls Changsha County, but also many places around Changsha County. The expansion of the Sun family's territory is carried out in the name of the bandits. In addition, the Sun family has a human relationship with the Xishang attendants. Home can be said to be rampant in place. In the Han dynasty, there were regulations that not only did 2,000 stone officials not send troops without authorization, but also did not use them outside the bounds. However, not long ago, Sun Jian sent his sons Sun Ce and Zhou Yu to lead an army to Luoyang to quell banditry. This is a flagrant violation of Han court regulations. It was during this expedition that Sun Ce and Zhou Yu met De Qiao and Xiao Qiao, and the two soon fell in love to the point of discussing marriage. Although the Sun family is in full force, the Sun family has recently encountered a powerful challenge from the Yangtze pirates. Not long ago, they failed to win several battles. This time, Sun Jian believed that Sun Ce must be summoned to help him. Sun Ce hesitated for a moment and said to the messenger, "Go back and tell your father that I will rush back right away when I have finished the matter here." The messenger promised and ran down. Zhou Yu asked, "Brother Sun wants to solve the Jinfan thief first." Sun Ce said angrily, "Jinfan thief Gan Ning dared to get involved with my woman, I must cut him 1,000 times." Zhou Yu frowned and said, "Those who make big things don't get angry. Brother Sun, the most important thing now is to eliminate the Yangtze River pirates. This is vital to our future development. Don't be distracted by other things." Sun Ce looked at Zhou Yu, and said in an unquestionable tone, "I have already decided." Zhou Yu knew Sun Ce's personality, so he didn't say anything anymore. Soon after, the officer who was looking for Li Liu Zhangju hurried back anxiously. "When I saw Sun Ce and Zhou Yu," he said in infinite horror, "General, Sun, no, it's not good, Li Lu, Zhangju, they are all killed." When Sun Ce Zhou Yu heard these words, he couldn't help being shocked. Sun Ce shouted, "This is impossible." The officer hurriedly said, "Yes, it is true. Subordinates have seen it with their own eyes." Sun Ce stepped in front of the officer, grabbed him by the skirt of his clothes and pulled him up, staring angrily, "Nonsense! What kind of thing is Chen Lang? How could it have killed me 5 Taituo warriors of Hung Jiang?" Zhou Yu frowned and asked, "Where did you find them? What was going on at the scene?" Sun Ce pushed away the officer and shouted, "Say it!" The officer swallowed, and then he rationalized his thoughts, and said, "The subordinates found Li Lu and the others in a wood more than a dozen miles away." At this point, the officer couldn't help showing fear on his face. "Look! 50 of them were scattered among the woods, all of them were killed. That scene is real, real." Sun Ce frowned and cursed, "Bastard!" The officer remembered something, and quickly took out a 4-inch-long steel needle from his arms, put it up with his hands, and said, "This was found on some corpses by his subordinates. Many brothers were caught by this type of steel needle. Killed." Sun Ce quickly took the steel needle, examined it, frowned and said, "Steel needle kills? Really unheard of." Then he handed the steel needle to Zhou Yu. Zhou Yu took the steel needle and looked at it, thinking, "I have never heard of such a killing technique." Then he said to the officer next to him, "Go and call Qiaofu." The officer responded and ran down. After a while, Qiaofu hurried over, saw Sun Ce and Zhou Yu, and quickly saluted, "The general is called, I don't know what to order." OZW.com. Zhou Yu walked to Qiaofu, handed the steel needle to Qiaofu, and asked, "Have you seen this thing?" Qiaofu quickly took the steel needle with both hands and examined it, and then reported, "If you return to the sun, this steel needle belongs to Chen Lang." Sun Ce frowned and asked, "Are you sure?" Qiaofu hurriedly bowed to Sun Ce and said, "The villain is absolutely certain. Because these steel needles were made by the blacksmith who Chen Lang asked the village not long ago. At that time, the villain saw Chen Lang throwing this at the trunk 10 meters away. The steel needle is nailed into the tree trunk and into the wood 3 minutes instantly, it is amazing." Zhou Yu said to Sun Ce, "It seems that this is Chen Lang who killed our 5 Taituo Hungjiang warriors." Sun Ce was full of anger and said angrily, "If you don't kill him, Sun Ce will not be a man." Qiaofu listened. The words of Zhou Yu and Sun Ce were panicked and suspicious. Zhou Yu said to Qiaofu, "Thank you, you can go down now." Qiaofu quickly bowed to the two of them and stepped back. Zhou Yu turned around and said to the furious Sun Ce, it seems that we have all underestimated this Chen Lang. Flying needle killing is unheard of, and after killing our 5 Taituo Hungjiang warriors in one breath, he disappeared without a trace. This guy is very different. Simple. Sun Ce snorted coldly and said to Zhou Yu, Brother Xian, immediately pass the order, the whole army is dispatched, I must slaughter this bastard. Zhou Yu frowned and said, Brother Sun is going to send the whole army to kill him for a Chen Lang? Brother Fool thinks it is very wrong. Brother Sun's top priority should be to expand the grand cause of the Sun family, not to fight against others. Sun Ce frowned, nodded, and said, What Brother Xian said is absolutely true. Well, we will continue to implement the original plan and prepare to raid the Jinfan Thief's water village. Zhou Yu smiled slightly, his face full of relief. It is said that after solving the 5 Taituo officers and soldiers sent by Sun Ce Zhou Yu, Chen Lang galloped to the northeast. After a day and night, he estimated that the other party could not find him anymore, so he slowed down the horse's rein among the mountains, forests, and green waters. Walk slowly, drinking while watching the beautiful scenery along the way. Such a leisurely wandering is something that I have never experienced before, and it does not have a novel and pleasant feeling. The ancient world is very different from the 21st century. The sky is clear as if washed with water, the air is so fresh that it's ecstatic, the woods and green grass are lush, the bright scenery can only be seen in the 21st century. Stuck in the fairy tale world. Chen Lang walked back and forth, unknowingly going north for 2 days. Chen Lang suddenly felt a little strange. According to his memory, he should have already arrived in a city. How come there are still only wild mountains, birds, elk, and deer in front of him at this moment? Then Chen Lang reacted and couldn't help laughing at himself, and muttered, I'm really confused. There is a city here in the 21st century, but now it is not the 21st century but the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty almost 2000 years ago. Chen Lang glanced around, and couldn't help sighing, this place is densely populated in the 21st century, but it is so desolate now, I am afraid that the 21st century Zil is only like this. Seeing that it was getting late, Chen Lang rode his horse to a big camphor tree, tied the black dragon, and found dead branches and leaves to raise a bonfire and sleep here. At this moment, a noise came from the wasteland in front. Chen Lang immediately looked for his voice, and saw a large group of people coming across the woods in the afterglow of the setting sun. Chen Lang hadn't seen a single figure for several days. Now he suddenly saw such a scene, he couldn't help but be surprised and quite agitated. Chen Lang stood up and looked at the group of people, only to find that many of them were armed with swords and linen clothes and red scarves. They turned out to be the Jinfan thief who had dealt with a few days ago. At this moment, all the Jinfan thieves also saw Chen Lang and recognized him. They couldn't help but stopped, showing a vigilant attitude. Chen Lang raised his voice and asked, Are you Gan Ning's subordinates? All the Jinfan thieves looked at each other, and the leader came forward, clasped his fist and said, I have seen a strong man. I don't know what the strong man is here. Seeing his wary look, Chen Lang understood his thoughts, and smiled, I'm here to have nothing to do with you. All the Jinfan thieves couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although they were not afraid of the sky, they were a little afraid of Chen Lang, the figure who once captured their boss. Seeing that these red scarf thief had captured many elderly men, Chen Lang couldn't help but smiled, when did you red scarf turn sex? What did you kidnap these old men? Let them go. The leader hurriedly said, the strong men don't know, these are the doctors we invited. Seeing these fierce red scarf thieves seemed very afraid of the young man in front of them, the doctors immediately knelt down and asked Chen Lang for help, the strong man, save us. Ask the strong man to save us. All the red scarves were depressed at this sight. Endless, but in front of Chen Lang, he didn't dare to beat and scold them. Chen Lang glanced at the doctors and asked the boss, what is going on? The boss didn't dare to conceal it, and said, these bad old men, we won't be rare. It's really because the boss and many of his brothers have been seriously ill, so I have to go to a nearby town to ask a doctor for treatment. Chen Lang felt a little surprised, and asked, what disease did Ganning and the others have? The boss shook his head and said, very weak, I don't know what the disease is. Thinking of Gan Ning's pride, Chen Lang wanted to see the man, so he said, I want to see Gan Ning, and go with you. The boss looked embarrassed. Chen Lang understood his worries, and smiled, I admire your boss as a person. If you want to see him, you don't have to worry about anything. The boss thought, how can a person like him do despicable things? At this point, he bowed to Chen Lang, if the strong man goes to see our boss, the boss will be very happy. Then he made a sign of please. The doctors originally expected Chen Lang to save them, but found that they were in the same group, and they were extremely disappointed. Chen Lang followed this group of red scarf thieves towards the east. Soon after he came to the entrance of a valley, Chen Lang saw dozens of red turban thieves guarding the high places on both sides of the valley. This must be the border of the red turban thieves' lair. A group of people entered the valley and passed through the valley where only 200 or 300 meters of grasses grew up, and their eyes suddenly became bright. Chen Lang saw a mulberry forest on the left, and a sparkling bay on the right. There were many wooden houses and thatched huts on the water. Many wooden boats were moored on the water. The silhouettes on the shore were full of smoke, except for many sackcloth and red scarfs. In addition to the red scarf, there are many old and weak women and children, presumably the family of the red scarf. There was a feeling in Chen Lang's heart that these red scarf thieves were actually no different from ordinary people. The reason they were cruel to others was probably a natural reaction of the weak and the strong. It was also a helpless act. The leader led Chen Lang and everyone to the largest wooden house in the water village. At this moment, several people walked out of the wooden house, and one of them was Gan Ning. Chen Lang couldn't help being surprised when he saw Gan Ning. After only a few days, Gan Ning had lost a lot of weight, his face was pale, and he looked sickly. Gan Ning was overjoyed when he saw Chen Lang, ignoring his visits to his subordinates and the doctors he had caught, strode to Chen Lang, and said with infinite joy, I'm so happy when you came to see me. He stretched out his hands and patted Chen Lang's arm heavily, then took Chen Lang's hand and walked into the house. Upon seeing this, the leader immediately asked his subordinates to take the crowd aside and follow him in. Gan Ning asked Chen Lang to sit side by side with him, and shouted at his subordinates, little ones, come up with wine and food. A boss promised and ran down. Gan Ning looked at Chen Lang and said with joy, it's rare to meet a man like a brother. Since the last time I parted, I have always missed my brother. I can finally meet again today. I'm so kind. Chen Lang is not accustomed to the ancients. This way of expressing emotions, according to the habits of the 21st century, is so passionate among men. Isn't it a rabbit? Chen Lang took the palm held by Gan Ning back without a trace, and said, I heard that you are sick, so come and see you. Gan Ning was very moved, and then he slapped his chest and said loudly, what can be wrong with me, I am still as strong as before. Chen Lang looked at Gan Ning's appearance and couldn't help frowning. Although Chen Lang is not a doctor, as a special elite, he still knows a little about general emergency care. He looked at Gan Ning's appearance and felt a bit like malaria. At this time, the leader led a few young men up with wine and meat, and put them in front of Ning. Gan Ning picked up the wine jar, filled a bowl for Chen Lang, and then poured another bowl for himself. Gan Ning put down the wine jar, picked up the wine bowl, and said to Chen Lang, I'll do it first. As soon as the words fell, he raised his head to work, and brightened the bottom of the bowl to Chen Lang. Chen Lang also picked up the wine bowl and raised his head to do it. Gan Ning's eyes lit up and he gave a big thumbs up in praise, brother is really a good man. He picked up the wine jar and prepared to pour the wine for Chen Lang. Suddenly, Gan Ning frowned and vomited out wow, then fell to the ground and twitched all over. When everyone saw this, they hurriedly gathered around, and someone called the doctor to get up. Seeing Gan Ning swaying constantly, Chen Lang couldn't help asking, "Brother, how do you feel?" Gan Ning lay on the ground while swaying, and said, Fucking, why is he so cold?" Chen Lang frowning, he quickly touched Gan Ning's forehead, but it was hot when he started. Chen Lang immediately confirmed in his heart that Gan Ning's disease was malaria. Several doctors were dragged in by a few bosses alive, and ordered them to treat their illnesses immediately. Chen Lang immediately stepped aside, and several doctors hurriedly diagnosed and treated Gan Ning with fear. Everyone was shaken off again, then whispered to each other. One of the middle-aged doctors came out and said tremblingly, this is a severe illness from cold and heat." Chen Lang's heart moved, and then he remembered that this so-called severe cold and heat was the ancient name for malaria. A boss said in an angry manner, "Stop talking nonsense, get healed soon." Audiobook. The few doctors looked at each other, or the middle-aged doctor said tremblingly, This kind of disease, even a famous doctor will not be able to treat it. I wait for nothing." Everyone was frightened and angry. One leader pulled out his sword and waved at the doctors, shouting, "You can't save the boss, you can kill your dog." The doctors have always been respected as gods by the villagers. Have you ever seen such a situation? So frightened, he fell to his knees, begging for mercy with his head like garlic. All the Jinfan thieves yelled and cursed, and someone couldn't help but was about to do it. Enough! A majestic shout suddenly remembered. The Jinfan thieves couldn't help but calm down, looking for a sound. They saw Chen Lang. Facing Chen Lang, everyone did not dare to be presumptuous. Chen Lang walked up to the doctors and saw that they were still kowtowing, frowning, and said angrily, "Don't kowtow." The doctors stopped quickly and looked at Chen Lang with infinite horror. At this time, in the hearts of these doctors, Chen Lang and these Jinfan thieves were probably no different. Chen Lang squatted down and asked several doctors, "Don't you know that Artemisia annua can treat this disease?" The several doctors looked at each other and shook their heads, their eyes looked at Chen Lang like a monster. Apparently, he was very dissatisfied with what Chen Lang said that Artemisia annua can cure diseases, but he didn't dare to say it. When Chen Lang saw the appearance of several doctors, he knew that they didn't understand the usefulness of Artemisia annua. Chen Lang stood up and said to the Jinfan thieves, "Ganning's disease, I can cure it, you can let these doctors go." All the Jinfan thieves were overjoyed, and a leader said excitedly, "If the strong man can save our head son, it is our great benefactor to someone." Another boss asked someone to come and drove the doctors out. Chen Lang instructed a boss, "You put Gan Ning on the bed and lie down." The boss replied and quickly followed suit. Chen Lang said to the others, "Others follow me to find medicinal materials." Everyone quickly agreed. Chen Lang led the crowd out of the house, to the water's edge, and marched up along the water's edge to find the medicinal material he needed, Artemisia annua. According to Chen Lang's common sense, things like Artemisia annua should be very common and widely distributed in China, and should be easy to find. Before long, a large patch of green weeds not far ahead came into view. Chen Lang was overjoyed and rushed up immediately, and everyone hurriedly followed. Chen Lang squatted down and carefully examined the area in front of him. The Jinfan thieves looked at each other, surprised in their hearts, and secretly said, "Are these also medicinal materials?" Chen Lang turned his head and said happily, "These are the Artemisia annua with information on malaria. Come on, cut more, maybe a lot will be needed." All the Jinfan thief heard the words, although they felt a little weird in their hearts, they hurriedly followed suit. Everyone cut a big bundle. The Artemisia annua was cut back and piled up. A leader asked, "Mighty man, can I make medicine now?" Chen Lang nodded and said, "Hurry up, malaria can't be delayed." The boss asked again, "How much do you have to endure?" Chen Lang was stunned. This question stopped him. He only knew that Artemisia annua can treat malaria, but he had no idea what to use. After thinking about it, I felt that Artemisia annua is slightly toxic, and it should not be used too much. It is better to use a small amount first, so he said, first use a half kadi, boil it into a medicinal soup and give it to Gan Ning. The leader responded, ran down and ordered a few women to follow suit. Chen Lang thought that half a kadi of Artemisia annua was not much, but he was totally wrong. The half kadi was not too much, but too much. But this is no wonder Chen Lang, who told him to be a layman in Chinese medicine. After more than an hour, a bowl of thick green water was sent to Gan Ning's bed and poured him down. Not long after this bowl of soup medicine went down, Gan Ning felt as if dozens of small knives were being scraped in his belly. The pain was so painful that he died alive. Then thunder swelled in his belly. Several women who had served Gan Ning hid their noses and escaped from the wooden house. At this time, Gan Ning's painful shouts came out from the wooden house, and everyone was frightened. The leaders looked at Chen Lang one after another, and Chen Lang banged his heart, and said in secret, couldn't Artemisia annua is not working. In fact, Chen Lang was wrong, not that Artemisia annua didn't work, but that the effect was too strong. After a while, the thrilling movement in the wooden house calmed down. Chen Lang and the leaders covered their noses and mouths with the stench and entered the wooden house. When they came to Gan Ning's window, they saw Gan Ning collapsed, and his eyes closed slightly, dying. When Chen Lang saw Gan Ning's appearance, he couldn't help being startled, and secretly said, will he be put to death? How could be? Chen Lang quickly asked, how do you feel? Gan Ning opened his eyes and glanced at Chen Lang faintly, and said weakly, I seem to be dying. However, it doesn't seem to be that cold anymore, and it's much better. Chen Lang muttered, it seems that the dose is heavier. Then he said to the boss who was in charge of boiling the medicine, from now on, cut the dose by half. The boss didn't dare to immediately agree, and looked at Gan Ning. Gan Ning said in an unpleasant manner, anyway, if it is not cured, it will be a dead end. Lao Tzu is going to fight. You just listen to Chen, brother Chen. The boss clasped his fists and promised. In the next few days, bowls of Artemisia annua concoction kept confining to Gan Ning's belly. Gan Ning was tossed so hard that she almost wanted to die. But fortunately, the composition of the Artemisia syrup was manifested. Gan Ning's illness was better than one day. 5 days later, he could walk down the ground, the high fever had subsided, and the cold feeling had disappeared. Seeing this scene, Chen Lang couldn't help but heaved a sigh of relief. If Gan Ning was really put to death by himself, he would feel guilty. This morning, Chen Lang came to see Gan Ning as he did a few days ago. Seeing Chen Lang coming, Gan Ning hurriedly pushed away the woman who was feeding him medicine, got out of bed with a plop, and knelt down in front of Chen Lang. Chen Lang was taken aback by Gan Ning's sudden move. I saw Gan Ning banged his head 3 times, and then said with infinite gratitude, if it weren't for Brother Chen, I would definitely not be able to save my life. Brother Chen is my savior. Chen Lang helped Gan Ning up and said with a smile, it's not a big deal, you don't have to worry about it. Gan Ning said with a serious face, the grace of life-saving, on tongue recreates, how can we not pay it? What's more, Brother Chen spared my life before. I owe Brother Chen 2 lives. I don't want to pay it back. I can only worship Brother Chen as the master. It's hard work like a dog. Then he knelt down again, and banged his head at Chen Lang 3 times. Chen Lang quickly helped Gan Ning up and smiled, I don't need you to repay, you don't have to be like this. Gan Ning shook his head vigorously, and said loudly, the mailman repays his gratitude and complains. How can you not report the great kindness? Seeing Chen Lang's face, Gan Ning couldn't help getting angry. He pulled out a scimitar and put it on his neck, saying loudly, if Brother Chen just refuses to accept me, I will return this life to Brother Chen. I, Gan Ning, will never owe favor to people. Chen Lang saw Gan Ning's behavior so intense, he couldn't help being surprised, and he couldn't help but sigh in secret, this man in the Han dynasty is too bloody. Knife at every turn. Bye. Then Chen Lang thought of the sentence Gan Ning said just now, if you just refuse to accept me. This sentence made the corner of his eyes jump, and only felt very strange. Chen Lang knew that a man like Gan Ning must be able to do it, so he nodded and said, well, we will be brothers from now on. Gan Ning was overjoyed, and immediately threw away the scimitar, rushed forward, and brought Chen Lang to him. A big bear hug, but Chen Lang got goosebumps. Gan Ning called all the bosses together and announced in public that Chen Lang is his master. From today onwards, the boss of the Jinfan thief is Chen Lang. All the Jinfan thieves had seen Chen Lang's power a long time ago. Hearing Gan Ning's decision, they didn't feel anything unacceptable, and they all paid homage to the new boss. Ever since, Chen Lang, a special soldier from the 21st century, became the leader of the Jinfan thief in the late Eastern Han dynasty. It was quiet in the middle of the night, and Chen Lang sat alone by the water, staring at the stars and moon in the sky in a daze. At this moment, he still couldn't believe that he had come to ancient times, and he had also become the boss of Jinfan thief. Chen Lang smiled bitterly and sighed. At this time, Gan Ning walked behind Chen Lang and clasped his fists, saying, Brother Lang, I have everything you want me to prepare. Chen Lang stood up and walked towards his wooden house, while Gan Ning followed Chen Lang. Before arriving at the wooden house, several leaders were waiting and prayed together, Brother Lang, Brother Gan. The wooden house where Chen Lang now lives is not Gan Ning's wooden house, but the wooden house next to Gan Ning's wooden house. Gan Ning originally wanted to give up his wooden house to Chen Lang, but Chen Lang said nothing. After all, the wooden house had been smelly for several days, and Chen Lang had a shadow in his heart, but he dared not want it. At this time, a table was placed in front of the wooden house. On the table were drinks and a dozen tablets. On each tablet were the names of Chen Lang's special soldiers, rhinos, monkeys, and so on. Chen Lang walked to the sacrifice table, his eyes swept over the names on the tablet, and the vivid figures appeared in Chen Lang's mind involuntarily. Chen Lang picked up the wine can and poured a bowl of wine into the sea bowl, put down the wine can and picked up the sea bowl, and said to the brothers, Brothers, until today I have no time to say goodbye to you. You go all the way, we will be in the next life. And be a brother. Then he put the wine bowl to his mouth and took a sip, and then poured the rest of the wine on the floor in front of the sacrifice table. OZW.com Chen Lang returned to the wooden house and took out the pile of broken meteorite fragments, with a thoughtful expression on his face, I came to this world because of this meteorite fragment. How is the energy of this meteorite fragment excited? Chen Lang recalled the passing of that day, and felt that his own glory bomb inspired the energy of the meteorite fragments. In other words, if another explosion of similar intensity is carried out, it may be possible to reproduce the energy of the meteorite fragments and open a space-time black hole to make himself travel through time and space again. As soon as Chen Lang thought about this, he couldn't help but get excited. Although he has been in this world for some time, he does not want to go back all the time. Chen Lang immediately thought of another question, even if the energy that inspired the meteorite opens the black hole, who can guarantee that this black hole will lead to the future world from which he came? Maybe it will lead to another strange time and space that is even more irrelevant to the future world. Chen Lang couldn't help but hesitated, and then made up his mind, no matter what the result is, he must bet on it. Gan Ning came in from outside. Chen Lang looked at Gan Ning and asked, Gan Ning, is there gunpowder here? Gan Ning blinked her eyes in confusion, and said, Gunpowder? What is gunpowder? What kind of disease is it cured? Then he became nervous and asked anxiously, Brother Wolf, you are sick. Chen Lang was stunned, then rolled his eyes, and said in secret, where are all this going? Then I thought about the history of gunpowder. Chen Lang was a soldier. Although he did not know the history of gunpowder in detail like experts, but he also knew roughly. Chen Lang remembered that gunpowder appeared to appear after the Han dynasty. This era should there is no gunpowder. Chen Lang couldn't help but get upset. Suddenly Chen Lang's eyes lit up and he murmured, "Is there no ready-made one? Can I be worthy of myself? It is not a complicated thing to configure gunpowder." He was very pleased with his words, and immediately said to Gan Ning, "Brother, I need it. Can you get something for me?" Gan Ning patted his chest without even thinking about it and said, "Brother Wolf will give you whatever you want. Brother Lang will get it all through the fire and water." After thinking about it, Chen Lang reported a string of names: sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal, the more the better. Gan Ning thought for a while and said, "There are so many charcoal water villages, sulfur and saltpeter. I've heard of them. They all seem to be medicines." Then he threw a fist at Chen Lang, "Brother, do it. Go down." Early the next morning, Gan Ning personally led a brigade of Jinfan thieves to leave the water village in a wooden boat with Jinfan. Soon after, people in nearby towns saw with horror that the terrifying Jinfan thief broke in like a wolf, and everyone was frightened and fleeing. However, the people soon discovered that these Jinfan thieves ignored them at all, instead rushing into a pharmacy, abducted a large amount of medicinal materials, and then drove away. The bosses of the drugstore were crying and grabbing the ground, but the people looked at each other inexplicably. Gan Ning and a group of big and small bosses looked at Chen Lang with a curious look at the configuration of a black powder. Gan Ning couldn't help asking, "Brother Lang, is this gunpowder? What is it for?" Chen Lang smiled while configuring, "This is a very powerful weapon." Everyone looked at each other, and someone whispered, "This black powder is a weapon? Did I hear it wrong?" Chen Lang will see that there is enough gunpowder in the configuration, so he stopped the configuration and carefully filled the black powder into a bamboo tube prepared in advance with a spoon, and then inserted a pre-oiled lead wire into the bamboo tube and held it. The bamboo tube came to the open space in front of the house. Gan Ning and others hurriedly surrounded themselves. Chen Lang asked a little boss to bring a torch, and then rushed to everyone, "Go away, stay away." Everyone looked at each other without knowing it. Chen Lang shouted, "All retreat to 30 steps away." Although everyone didn't know what was going on, they didn't dare to violate Chen Lang's order. They quickly retreated 30 steps away, and everyone looked at this curiously. Sighed. Everyone saw Chen Lang lit the lead with a torch and ran over quickly. Everyone didn't know it, they just felt baffled. Seeing Chen Lang coming over, Gan Ning couldn't help asking, "Brother Wolf, what are you?" Chen Lang screamed and hurriedly said to everyone, "All get down." He said that he got down first. Going down, everyone hurried to the ground when they saw this scene. Just when everyone felt inexplicable, a loud bang suddenly came and everyone was startled. Almost at the same time, everyone saw a group of flames rising in the middle of the open space, and the strong wind and gravel rushed towards their faces. The scene was thrilling. Everyone has never seen such a scene before, and they are all shocked from ear to ear. A boss couldn't help but exclaimed, "My mother! What is this?" Chen Lang could not help being very happy when he saw that the effect of the explosion was very satisfactory. Gan Ning and the others finally recovered, couldn't help but look at Chen Lang, their eyes filled with awe, and they seemed to regard Chen Lang as a god. Chen Lang was a little excited and felt that he might go back. He quickly returned to the room, made another gunpowder bomb, and said to Gan Ning on the side, "Brother, I'm leaving." Gan Ning was taken aback. He didn't understand what the wolf brother meant. Chen Lang didn't say much, he took the gunpowder bomb and the pack of meteorite fragments again to the open space in front of the wooden house. Place the meteorite fragments on the ground, and then place the gunpowder bomb on top of the meteorite fragments. According to Chen Lang's estimation, this should reinvigorate the energy of meteorite fragments. After thinking about it, someone brought a thick plank to hold it. Let everyone retreat to the distance, he himself stood by the gunpowder bomb and lit the fuse, and the fuse spread quickly with sparks. Everyone was shocked when they saw it, and they crouched on the ground involuntarily, but Chen Lang did not escape this time, but squatted down beside the gunpowder bomb, covering his whole body with a thick plank. Boom! A loud bang sounded once again, flames rose, and the scene was flying sand and rocks. Gan Ning and all the Jinfan thieves saw that their wolf brother actually flew up in the air towards the bush next to the wooden house, dragging a piece of white smoke, and staring at each other immediately. They didn't know what their wolf brother was doing. Aircraft? After reacting, his complexion changed, and he hurried to the bush where Chen Lang had fallen. Everyone rushed to the bushes, and they saw their wolf brother very embarrassed. His hair was scorched, his face was blackened, and he could not get up after lying there for a long time. Gan Ning and the others hurried over to help Chen Lang. Gan Ning saw that Chen Lang didn't seem to be in any serious trouble, and couldn't help but relax. He couldn't help laughing. "Brother Lang, what are you doing?" Zhong Jinfan thief can't help but laugh. Chen Lang said dejectedly, "Damn, it didn't work." Everyone didn't understand Chen Lang's meaning. Gan Ning asked, "What has no effect?" Chen Lang shook his head and said to everyone, "Get me all the meteorite fragments that were blown up." Everyone looked at each other, and Gan Ning asked, "Brother Lang, what is a meteorite?" Chen Lang thought for a while, and said, "The little packet of rocks I just took out was placed under the bomb, and it must have been blown up. You can find it for me." Everyone understood, and immediately separated. Find. Chen Lang came to the big water tank next to the wooden house and washed his upper body. After a while, he finally recovered his original appearance. Chen Lang sighed for a long time, frowning and murmured, "Damn, how could it be ineffective?" Chen Lang felt a little anxious. After a while, Gan Ning and others sent the meteorite fragments they found to Chen Lang. Chen Lang looked at the small pile of fragments in front of him, frowning, and secretly said, "When the meteorite was received, this meteorite had a peculiar luster, but now it has no luster at all. Could it be that its energy has been consumed last time? Empty?" At this point, Chen Lang couldn't help but feel cold all over his body, because it meant that he couldn't return to the modern society where he came from. In fact, Chen Lang had anticipated such a situation a long time ago, but he had always been thinking about it in case. Chen Lang let out a long sigh. His mind was in confusion, and he didn't know what to do. "Brother Wolf, is this momentum important?" Gan Ning couldn't help asking when seeing Chen Lang's serious expression. Chen Lang nodded. Gan Ning looked at the seemingly ordinary stones, and said in a puzzled way, "These stones can be found everywhere, why should Brother Wolf care so much?" Chen Lang smiled bitterly. At this time, there was a noise from the valley. Gan Ning turned his head to look over, and then happily said to Chen Lang, "Brother Lang, the people have brought us things." Chen Lang raised his head and looked towards the valley. He saw hundreds of people drove pigs and sheep and pushed rice over, and many people in the water village greeted him. Chen Lang frowned and said, "Brother, it's not good for you to do this. The lives of these people are definitely not very good. How can you blackmail them?" Gan Ning was stunned, and then smiled, "Brother Wolf, you misunderstood, we didn't blackmail them. This is their gratitude for our salvation, but I didn't want them." Chen Lang was taken aback for a moment, "Giving you help? Aren't you all about robbery?" Gan Ning was depressed, and said, "Brother Wolf, I am not so boring." Then nodded, "It's no wonder Brother Wolf misunderstood. Who told us to carry the title of thief too? Brother Wolf, though we are. He is a thief, but he also knows what to do and what not to do. Ordinary people are our elders and villagers. How can we harm them? We will only rob the government and the big family. You don't know, Brother Wolf, a considerable part of the money and food obtained from each looting is used to help the people who can't survive, and we don't get much by ourselves." Gan Ning pointed to the people in the distance and said, "Those people were saved from the government last year." Gan Ning raised his brows and said angrily, those people in the government are inferior to the bandits. Slaughtering the village, if we hadn't arrived in time, all the people in that village would have been killed. Chen Lang frowned and asked, why does the government want to slaughter the people? OZW.com Gan Ning curled his lips and mocked, it's not for promotion and fortune. The local county magistrate, in order to appeal to the court, kill good, and call the massacred bandits. And the looted money was used to buy the eunuchs in the court. As there are so many bandits today, they are not forced out by them. What government officials? I will kill them and rob them. There are also those big households who have so much money and food, but they just don't care about the lives of the people. Lao Tzu will not let them go. Chen Lang couldn't help being overwhelmed. Looking at the people who came to treat the Jinfan thief, I saw that they talked and laughed very happily with the Jinfan thief, as if they were a family. Chen Lang couldn't help but feel a strange feeling in his heart. He felt that the world seemed to be the right way, and the evil way seemed to be the right way. The king of thieves, in fact, those people at the highest level are probably not as justice as they advertised. They are just the biggest robbers. At this point, Chen Lang couldn't help but disappear from the gang of Jinfan thieves in front of him, and he couldn't help feeling a little intimacy. In fact, these guys are good boys. An old man came to Gan Ning and paid a respectful salute. How is the king? Gan Ning laughed and said, good and good for you. Thanks to the king, everyone has lived very well this year. The old man's eyes showed a sincere expression of gratitude. Gan Ning pointed at Chen Lang and said, this is Brother Lang, my master. The old man was taken aback, looked at Chen Lang, and hurriedly worshipped, see you, the little man. He didn't know how to call Chen Lang for a while, so he followed Gan Ning's name. Chen Lang smiled, the elderly don't need to be polite. Thank you, master. Gan Ning said to Chen Lang, Brother Wolf, I'll talk to him. Then he dragged the old man aside, with a mysterious appearance. In the middle of the night, Chen Lang, who was fast asleep, suddenly felt something got into the bed, and immediately woke up and opened his eyes. Seeing a blue silk next to him, he couldn't help being startled, and cried out, who? The man raised his head and looked at Chen Lang with a panic and unconsciousness. It turned out to be a pretty girl. Chen Lang was stunned and frowned, who are you? Why did you come to me? The girl whispered and said, I am Wanner, I. At this point, she was already ashamed and bowed her head indefinitely. At this moment, Gan Ning, who heard the movement, rushed in and shouted, what's the matter? What's the matter? Then he saw Brother Wolf and the girl lying on the bed. Nothing happened. I couldn't help but feel relieved. Responsibly said, oh. My little brother is really too reckless. He said that he wanted to leave. Wait a minute. Chen Lang called out hastily. Gan Ning stopped, turned around, took a look at the girl who had almost been in the quilt, and asked Chen Lang with a smile, Brother Wolf, are you satisfied with this girl? Chen Lang rolled his eyes and said angrily, I knew it must be you guy. Who made you do this? Gan Ning was stunned, and said in a puzzled way, don't all men need women? Chen Lang said angrily, I don't need it. Gan Ning blinked in surprise, then showed a look of horror, took a step back, and stammered, Brother Wolf, do you like men, do you like men? Chen Lang scolded, fart. He lowered his head and glanced at the girl who seemed to be shivering under the quilt, and said, I'm so sorry for treating them like this. Gan Ning understood, and smiled, Brother Lang misunderstood, I didn't force her, but she did it voluntarily. Wanner, your brother Gan Ning didn't force you. No. Yes, it is Wanner. Voluntary. A timid voice came from the quilt. Chen Lang was stunned. Gan Ning said to Chen Lang, look, Brother Lang, I didn't lie to you, did I? Chen Lang frowned, only thinking that the atmosphere of this era is more open than his era. In ancient times, weren't women not going out of the boudoir in 3 steps? Why is the situation here completely different from what is said in the history books? Chen Lang didn't understand this question, so he didn't think about it anymore. To Wanner hiding in the quilt, Wanner, I don't need someone to accompany you, let's go down. Gan Ning asked quickly, doesn't Wolf like Wanner? She is the best girl around us up. Chen Lang glared at Gan Ning, and said angrily, good girls can't be spoiled. Gan Ning smacked his mouth and muttered, why is this spoiled? Wanner poked her head out of the quilt and looked at Chen Lang with a grieved expression, with crystal tears rolling in her clear eyes. It looked like Chen Lang had done something bad to her.